So who is Putin? And what kind of world does he want to build? Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end.
Okay, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I think it is fucking insane what Donald Trump is saying, 100%. But given how unpopular like supporting Ukraine is in the United States of America, I don't know if this is not for Bernie. Obviously, Bernie talks about domestic issues. That's all right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. Donald Trump attacks Zelensky amid U.S. talks with Russia. He called him a dictator. Okay.
Now to the latest on President Trump.
And yes, I will absolute. What the hell is this? Did you see Sexpextany's orbiter saying that Epstein is deleting evidence? Dude, the tweet you linked to me is from an account called Federal Rape. And it literally has the SS logo on it. Please exercise a little bit with what you are linking, okay? That is insane. Please be normal. That's crazy. Like, I get it. You want me to cover drama. It's fucking awesome. It's not even a drama at this point. It's just crimes and legal battles. But even then, I mean, come on, dude. All right.
And the fallout from his remarks attacking Ukraine's President Zelensky, calling him a dictator, and falsely blaming Ukraine for starting the war with Russia. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, is tracking this for us. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Michael. Well, for 3 years, the U.S. has stood firmly behind Ukrainian President Zelensky as he fights off a Russian invasion. Now, just 4 weeks into office, President Trump is upending that bond. In a dramatic 180, he is pivoting towards Russia's Vladimir Putin and away from President Zelensky, now accusing the Ukrainian leader of being unsuccessful, unpopular, and illegitimate. And their war of words is escalating. This morning, President Trump intent on reframing the war in Ukraine. After falsely blaming Ukrainian President Zelensky for the Russian invasion, Trump now labeling the U.S. ally a dictator.
Did you cover the Jay-Z charges being dropped? Everyone in here was quick to call him a POS when it was filed. I thought it was a little weird. It didn't pass the smell test, but I mean, specifically that story didn't pass the smell test, but I'm not above. I mean, I don't think that he is like a good guy in general. I just didn't. Anyway, let's continue.
Dictator.
A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left.
But Trump using no such label for Russian President Putin, who has targeted his political opponents and overseen Russian elections widely criticized as neither free nor fair. Zelensky, the former comedian turned president, won by a landslide in 2019. He's polling over 50%, but has been unable under the Ukrainian constitution to hold elections while the rage is on and the country remains under martial law.
Officially, month one of the Burger Reich is upon us. Okay? The Burger Reich has officially reached its first month. In that time frame, I think like 11 planes fell out of the sky. Okay? Thousands of federal employees were laid off. The price of eggs went up quite a bit. Some of the federal employees that were laid off were actually working directly on combating the avian flu, which is the reason why the price of eggs have gone up, because of this avian flu that is destroying the poultry supply. Egg prices are still rising, by the way. Don't lie to me. That was a year's worth of bullshit. Nope. We have a drunk rapist. For a defense secretary. Donald Trump is actively saying the quiet part out loud in spectacular fashion in terms of American foreign policy. After forcing a ceasefire with Israel, he is now saying that Israel should basically roll over Gaza and forcibly the Gaza Strip so he can purchase it and turn it into, I guess, Mar-a-Lago. We have RFK Jr. in charge of the HHS, and we have a guy who was on, I think, MTV, Sean Duffy, in charge of the Department of Transportation, which is also cool because everything is falling apart. Turns out it was all being held together by woke. Here's where we are. Okay? This is it. Fantastic. Libs owned. Federal government undermined. Okay? Billionaires making more money than ever before. Fantastic. If you are living in Arkansas, okay, and you haven't had gainful employment for the past 8 years and living on disability while simultaneously complaining about how the woke libtards are doing welfare to train the youth, your life is about to get a whole lot worse, okay? I still feel bad for you. I still want you to have the best life possible, but the reality of the matter is it's not going to happen, okay? It's most likely not going to happen for you. And also, you're going to probably not realize that it's not going to happen for you, and you will probably get angrier and angrier as your conditions worsen. You still feel bad? How? I don't care. I feel bad for everybody. I don't think anyone should suffer. That is my worldview in general. I don't. I mean, I've been a longtime advocate of universal health care, which means even Nazis get health care. The entire point is that a competent federal apparatus is supposed to create some semblance of stability. So it's harder to just find yourself in the throes of reactionary politics. That's my worldview. Okay. Having said that, getting back to foreign policy, in a world where fascism and movements are growing, especially in Western liberal capitalist nations, we have the #1 big dog, big fascist dog in the building, actively hyping up Vladimir Putin. Let's take a look.
Zelensky accusing Trump of spreading Russian disinformation and Kremlin talking points. Saying President Trump unfortunately lives in this disinformation space. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, coming to Trump's defense and
what a shit. Are you a Republican? We just talked about how Republicans' entire worldview is about spite, hurting your enemies, and also never understanding the impact of certain legislative decisions until it harms them or their immediate family members. You as a progressive person, you as a leftist, you as a liberal even, should not behave in that way. I know it gets hard sometimes, and it seems silly, and I certainly do get very mad in different moments, and unload on certain chatters and whatnot, and there is a feeling of catharsis there. But having said that, in terms of my advocacy always will revolve around trying to improve people's material conditions, even if they hate me, even if they despise me, including all my haters in this chat. You know, I still want them to have wonderful public transit, healthcare, better material conditions overall. I don't give a shit. You could hate on me all you want. I'm gonna give you that sweet healthcare, whether you like it or not. Okay?
Mouthing him in public media, everyone who knows the president will tell you that is an atrocious way to deal with this administration. Trump's comments sending shockwaves through Europe, the German chancellor saying it is simply wrong and dangerous to deny President Zelensky democratic legitimacy. The intense public back and forth began when Trump falsely claimed that Ukraine started the war. But it was Putin that invaded Ukraine 3 years ago, Russian troops storming across the border. Trump's former Vice President Mike Pence trying to set the record straight, saying, Mr. President, Ukraine did not start this. Russia launched an unprovoked and brutal invasion, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives. The road to peace must be built on the truth. All this coming as Trump has been excluding Ukraine from negotiations to end the war. Putin relishing the reopening of relations between the U.S. and Russia after a 5-hour meeting between senior Russian and American officials without any Ukrainian representation. Putin praising Trump, saying the talks have gone well and that he would like to meet with the American president. But back in Washington, some Republicans aren't so welcoming of this new thaw in relations, though most have stopped short of directly criticizing Trump.
Vladimir Putin is a gangster. He's a gangster with a black heart. He makes Jeffrey Dahmer look like Mother Teresa.
Democrats are sounding the alarm.
It's a really disturbing day.
Did he actually say Ukraine started the war? Oh, he absolutely did. I mean, we were there when he said it. It was so shocking. It was one of the very few instances where chat going, you have to rewind. Valid rewind. Yes, I will do the Millet doing a rug pull, crypto rug pull today. CoffeeZilla apparently covered it. If you send me that video, I'll watch it. Traumatic events happening to these susceptible people leads to the shift towards agriculture. It's all part of the plan. They will continue to fuck over their base and will lead to even more rabid supporters. Good times. Yeah, I think that here's the issue, okay? If there was a competent counterbalance to all the madness that the Republicans are engaging in, that you could funnel that anger and resentment that people have into more appropriate targets and into a more productive, a more productive resistance network, okay? But that would require the Democrats to grow a spine, a backbone, and also have real positions that they care about. Guys, stop sending me the link. It's here, okay? It's here. It's in here. It's in here. It's in here. Calm down. We will watch it later, okay? And if the Democrats, who are supposed to be the counterbalance to all of this growing fascism, don't do that, okay? If they don't do that, then people will continue to think like, oh, we just haven't been cruel enough to trans people or undocumented migrants or whatever. And that's the reason why I'm still suffering. Okay? That's it. And that's where we're at. Okay, I feel like nobody wants me to talk about Ukraine. Everyone is so bored of Ukraine. They're like, it's washed. Every time I talk about Ukraine, you guys are talking about like domestic affairs between Democrats and Republicans and like the voters and whatnot. Everyone's like, yeah, bro, give it up. It's over. Breathtaking reversal in U.S. foreign policy. Fareed Zakaria reacts to Trump's attacks on Zelensky. I don't even think that this is a reversal of U.S. foreign policy. It's just a reversal of the way that we talk about U.S. foreign policy. Okay, that's it. I will cover this part of it though. I think this is the only part that's like the Bernie video is.
Thanks, everybody, for joining me to discuss.
Has 2.6 million views in 19 hours. All right, let's see what Bernie has to say.
Very serious issue. Yesterday,
I'm the NATO leftist you think doesn't exist? Oh, I know. I know that there are plenty of NATO quote-unquote leftists. You just can't have it both ways. You can't be a fucking pro-NATO guy and be like, I'm a Marxist-Leninist or I'm a socialist. You can't be a pro-NATO socialist. It's just it. You know, it's fine. Maybe you want workers to seize the means of production here, okay? But as far as foreign policy goes, that's over there. That's fine. We should continue aligning with fascists as long as it's at the behest of American empire. Pro-NATO-ish in the sense that it's a necessary evil. Can you elaborate for those who don't understand why NATO equals bad? NATO, in its inception, was designed to destroy socialist movements, okay, all around Western Europe and all around the globe. And that is precisely, name one socialist regime in the EU. That's it. That's what it is. There is none. What are you talking about? Yeah, that's the reason. NATO is a big part of that. In the most reductive ways, I will just simply say this, okay? I will simply say this. Think about it this way. World War II ends. Europe is in ruin, okay? The Allies have won. Who are the heroes of that story? If you look to Europe, many people saw the Red Army as liberators. They saw the USSR as genuine liberators because they were, okay? That's it. The Soviets took on the most amount of combat, incurred the highest penalties for it. And not only that, but internally within Europe, the Soviet-aligned resistance networks were seen as the heroes because they were on the right side of this conflict. The communists, the socialists, the trade unionists, all of those people that actively took up arms and engaged in militant resistance against the Nazi movement. Okay? USSR were no better than the Nazis, lol. Yeah, okay. Okay, chatter. Sure. Sure, bud. Yeah. No, it's actually worse than the Nazis, right? It's even worse. The Soviets were worse than the Nazis. So, at that stage, America already was interested in actively destroying the socialist scourge, okay? And they immediately worked to build a cooperative security network. They rebuilt Western Europe and then also simultaneously started building up a security apparatus that would get all of these countries that were maybe a lot more sympathetic to the Soviets, especially after World War II, to not be sympathetic to the USSR at all, because that was terrifying for America. So what did the United States do in that regard? Well, who was the best? Bro, stop. You don't understand Europe. Every European, whenever they see a man of my complexion, which would be considered very white in the United States of America, every European chatter that hears a man that looks like me with the name Hassan turns into fucking little Adolf. Okay? Ridiculous. You don't have the high IQ to understand. You don't understand the fascism in Europe. It's very different than the way you look at it. The number one haters that had active combat experience at the time against the communists, which were now the enemy, were Nazis and fascists. So that's who America aligned with in all of these countries. They did that directly. Okay? Sometimes literally Nazi generals, like in Germany. When Germany entered NATO, German generals that fucking were Nazi generals were in charge of NATO. In other countries where the resistance movement, partisan movements, like movements that were anti-fascist in general, that had more popular support, were also destabilized through NATO. False flag attacks, for example. Operation Gladio comes to mind. NATO, in this day and age, is still very much used as a protection racket, okay? So when Donald Trump says, you guys got to spend more of your money, your hard-earned dollars, that's basically the mob guy coming in and saying, you know, your storefront is broken. We're here to protect you, and we've protected you for the longest time. Be a real shame if they fucked it up further. Give us more money. Okay? Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't other gangsters out there. Vladimir Putin is a gangster himself. Okay? For sure. But that's just how NATO works. The USSR was an ally of the Nazis' Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. They attacked Poland together. Europe remembers and hates the communists. Yeah, totally. Europe definitely hated the communists post-World War II, like immediately after World War II. You're right. Yeah. I love when EU guys also come in here and they're like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand Europe, man. We fucking hate socialism. Like, I know, man. I know. I understand that. Trust me. I live in America. Okay? We hate socialism even more than you guys do. Okay? I promise. Anyway, I feel like I have to relitigate history every time. Every time. Would it just be the U.S. trying to get more paying their dues? No, it's not that they're... First of all, who do you buy the weapons from when you need to spend more on your defense? A lot of these countries don't have like a big enough domestic manufacturing industry around weapons. They get it from America. So when Donald Trump says you need to do more, you need to spend more money on your defense, they mean you need to buy more of our weapons, okay? That's what the purpose of this is. Hassan Abe has beef with Europe in perpetuity? No, I don't. Anyway, let's hear what Bernie has to say.
Witnessed an extremely sad moment in American history. We saw the President of the United States aligning himself with the dictator of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to undermine the independence of Ukraine and its democracy. Let's be clear. Trump is showing us that he sees one of the world's most brutal dictators as his friend. And
it's not meant to be a gotcha. Can you explain what the U.S. did denazification if they were so anti-communism? Wait, what? Denazification was unsuccessful and didn't really happen in Germany.
Now,
but I don't want to get into that.
Democratic allies in Europe as his enemies. He wants a world that is safe for authoritarians and oligarchs, but extremely dangerous for democracies. It will not surprise you when I tell you that Trump is lying, as he so often does. Yesterday, Trump said that Ukraine started the war. That's not true. Russia invaded Ukraine twice, first in 2014 and then again in 2022. Right now, Russia occupies about 20% of Ukraine. Since Putin's horrific invasion, over 1 million people have been killed or injured. Every single day, Russia continues to rain down hundreds of missiles and drones on Ukrainian cities. Putin's forces have massacred civilians and kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, bringing them back to Russian re-education camps. These atrocities led the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin in 2023 as a war criminal. Further, Trump called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator. That's not true either. Zelensky won 75% of the vote in free elections. In fact, his approval rating is higher than Trump's. In the midst of a brutal war, Ukraine's parliament continues to function and free and unfettered political debate takes place. Trump claimed that our European allies have done little to support Ukraine in its fight against Putin's invasion. He said the United States has contributed 3 times more than Europe. But that's another lie. In fact, Europe has provided more aid to Ukraine than the United States. But it's not just that Trump is lying again. That's not new. It's what this all reveals about where he wants to take our country and, in fact, the entire world. Trump is cozying up to Vladimir Putin. So who is Putin? And what kind of world does he want to build? Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end.
Okay, from a purely aesthetic standpoint, I think it is fucking insane what Donald Trump is saying, 100%. But given how unpopular, like, supporting Ukraine is in the United States of America, I don't know if this is, not for Bernie, obviously. Bernie talks about domestic issues. That's his bread and butter. He talks about it all the time. But if this is the point of contention that the Democrats want to raise, it is only going to further make the dummies in general in the American public think, oh, they just want more war. Like, Donald Trump is ending the war and these guys just want more war, if that makes sense. It's not, I wouldn't even say it's entirely correct. I'm just saying that that is the way it looks. And I feel like the Democrats have better issues to argue about right now. Would rather have the Dems die on that hill, to be honest. So we shouldn't talk about it? No. First of all, I've covered it extensively for the past 3 days to a degree where everyone is yelling at me and actively telling me to shut the fuck up about it and move on to other shit. I think I'm trying to figure out how this will be received by the broader public. Does that make sense? Like, I often talk about what issues you take on and how you take on those issues, and what the broader reception is for talking about. Okay? And I think in this circumstance, like, if your goal is to undermine the Trump regime, okay, doing a multifaceted approach is good. And I think that's what Bernie is doing. I think Bernie Sanders is tackling this issue from every avenue, and therefore this is appropriate for him to do. But if the Democrats hold on to exclusively this side of the bargain and not all the other things that Bernie routinely rails against, like the oligarchs controlling the government and things like that, then they're going to come across like a party that only cares about maintaining U.S. aid, and a party that only cares about, saying that we have to keep giving Ukraine more weapons, and we have to keep throwing Ukrainians into the meat grinder because Vladimir Putin is a thug. Now, it's true, Vladimir Putin is a thug. Okay? He is a gangster. But I don't think the American public broadly cares about that. Okay, but his intake is not exactly correct. Putin in the beginning did a lot of good because Russia was shit after the USSR fell. Literally mafia time without rules and laws. He became slowly normal, clean with social benefits. He does a terrible thing now, but he also contributed to making normal things in Russia back in the time. I mean, he was never a progressive, liberating socialist figure at all, though. It was more so that any leadership after the dissolution of the USSR was going to have to be tasked with maintaining some semblance of stability. It was complete collapse. Also, Vladimir Putin was our guy. That's the other side of the story that I think a lot of people forget.
Who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end of the Cold War. Russia holds sham elections every 6 years where Putin wins 90% of the vote, and authorities don't even try to hide their ballot stuffing. There is no freedom of speech or free media in Putin's Russia. Protests are violently suppressed. Tens of thousands of people are imprisoned for protesting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Political dissidents are harassed or thrown into jail. The bravest, people like Alexei Navalny, are killed outright. Hundreds of thousands of Russians have fled Putin's brutal regime since his invasion of Ukraine. But Putin has maintained control in his country by offering Russia's oligarchs a simple deal. If you give me absolute power, I'll let you steal as much as you want from the Russian people. And that's why in a country where many are struggling economically, Russian oligarchs have stashed trillions of dollars in offshore tax accounts. That is the Russian leader that Trump admires. That is the Russian oligarchy.
The way I see Vladimir Putin is basically like if post dissolution of the USSR, a man who wanted to be the Israel of America and never got that opportunity, but he still did Israel shit. But given the historic alignments and also given Russia as a foreign regional superpower that wanted to rebuild some of its glory, they oftentimes were directly at odds with the United States of America, and therefore they were constantly treated like shit. Okay, but this does not mean that Vladimir Putin was ever a good person or ever a good leader in general, and that he was always a right-wing, pro-capitalist kleptocrat. I think that was the most revealing aspect of his interview with Tucker Carlson, where he was just like, why can't we be Israel? We want to be your Israel. We would love to be your Israel. Why did you never give us that opportunity to be your Israel, please? That's it. How do you think the relationship between our allies will be if we keep aligning with Russia? I don't think that's going to be, I don't know. I don't know if that's like entirely consequential. I think tariffs are probably more damaging in terms of like America maintaining its allegiances and commitments than aligning with Vladimir Putin. Depending on how things turn out with this ceasefire, you could have a very different attitude, in a couple months. Europeans will dump the USA faster than they know it. We're spiteful creatures. I don't think they will, but I don't know. Things are definitely changing. I think it's dangerous to have this thought about Putin or anyone saying he's all bad and taking away credit he might have had, not that I like him or anything. It's just not dialectic. No, I just think that any person who would do the exact same thing in terms of maintaining stability and under complete collapse. I mean, it's like looking at Israel's land reforms and being like, well, it's technically socialist. Okay, but it's also being utilized towards colonialism. It's being utilized towards maintaining the settler colonial project. You know what I mean? Like, sure, on principle, creating some semblance of stability in a country that was absolutely, utterly devastated is good. Anyway, tariffs are just money. Aligning with Putin and claiming Greenland is much more serious for Europeans. Tariffs are just money? What are you talking about? That's the most important part of everything. That is all this is. Tariffs are just money is so funny. What do you think happens when economies collapse? What do you think happens when like Europe becomes objectively poorer and poorer and poorer as a consequence of these tariffs? Yeah, tariffs are just money, except money is everything.
That he supports. But that is not the perspective of the American people. We know, and we are proud of, the fact that the United States of America is the longest standing democracy in the world. We know that many hundreds of thousands of brave Americans over the years have fought and died to defend democracy.
I wish we had more cranks, man. Like, I wish we had like real rugged anti-imperialist cranks. Like there used to be people who would take like positions that I was shocked by, you know what I mean? In terms of like foreign policy, the American Congress wasn't this uniparty on foreign policy where like everything came across like a State Department readout, you know? Like, where are the Mike Gravells of the world? I mean, he's dead, but like, and I'm talking, the only type of cranks that we now have are like weird people that have allegiances to like, you know, the Ba'ath Party or something. You know what I mean? Like there's never any cranks on the, like Bernie Sanders was regarded as a crank back in the day for his unconditional support to the, to like Latin American socialist movements and shit. Like he used to be not this guy that you're seeing now. He used to be the guy. And it's interesting because like the only cranks that are allowed in American politics in terms of like, you know, elected representatives are people like Tulsi Gabbard. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's only in one direction. And then they're not even considered cranks after a while anyway. Oh, the funniest part is like two of the people who started the Gravel Institute went into investment banking after it fell off. Wasn't literally the Ukraine guy, the #1 Ukraine guy, a Gravel Institute kid too? The dude who was like, how can I make, like the dude who went to Ukraine and then interviewed a bunch of people that work for think tanks in Ukraine with clips out of context, like with my classic clips. Hassan is pro-Russia. And then he made like a video about how, you know, Ukrainians were very mad about Hassan. That's like an insane thing to do, by the way. I genuinely do think that that's like wild. When you're actively hands-on in a conflict area and you're like, I'm going to do drama content here. You're literally pro-Russia even now? Yes, of course. I am pro-Russia. Yes. I love Vladimir Putin. You caught me.
We also know that our allies in the world are those countries that believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. In this critical moment in our history, I hope that every American, regardless of political perspective, will stand tall and say yes to democracy, no to oligarchy, and no.
I mean, this is pretty basic stuff, and he's not wrong on the broad scopes of this conversation, you know, the broad strokes of this conversation. Like, yeah, Donald Trump is insane. Why do American progressives not look at the actually leftist around the world position? Even in Germany, the left party Die Linke is yelling about NATO, etc. Latin American leaders have talked about it, but for some reason, Americans are so stupid. American acceptance